Hi there, everyone. Lee Henson here, president and founder of Agiledad, and it's time for today's episode of the Daily Standup. So without any further ado, let's get started. Today, I have a special treat for you. So not only do I have a resident business agility expert here with me, Richard Lawrence, but I have a dear friend, certified Scrum trainer, and certified enterprise coach. Richard, how are you today?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here. How are you, Lee?
Better than I deserve, man. Better than a fish on a bicycle. I don't know if the fish rides a bicycle, but it was a good answer. So today, I thought it would be fun to talk about. I know that you have done many things for the Agile community, including writing a book. So I wanted to talk with you today a little bit about your specialty, a little bit about BDD and what that is, what it means to you, how does it impact the Agile community. So give us the rundown.
All right. Behavior-driven development, or BDD, is a way of collaborating for teams. I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking this is a testing thing or a test automation thing.
Right.
It's really a collaboration method that happens to produce automated tests as a side effect. So it's collaborating using concrete examples of the behavior you want to create in your product, and then formalizing those into automated tests to guide your development. But it doesn't start with the test. It starts with collaborating around examples. So you think about like user stories as taking high-level customer empathy and pushing that down into the details.
Right.
And this is the next level of that. So I started in XP 21 years ago. And the thing that I loved about XP was that customer perspective all the way down to every user story. So we're actually building the right thing. But then it would shift at that point. And now we're talking about tasks and components, and the things we're going to do. And so what I like about BDD is that it continues what we do with user stories down to the next level of detail. Like within this story, what's an example of somebody doing this? What's an example that has a different outcome? And so we take that customer empathy really all the way into the software itself.
This is really interesting because I've had interviews with other people before, especially in the design world, where we talk about incorporating personas and human-centered design, and we talk about trying to humanize work and trying to pull things together so that we best understand who the end consumer is. And in fact, one of the pitfalls that I most commonly point out when I go inside of organizations is their inability to really understand the consumer's needs. And I think what I mean by that is that they believe they understand from a subject matter expert perspective, what a product or service should do. But I don't know that they implicitly understand the behavioral side of what's happening, what causes people from a psychology background to be able to do those things. So if you wouldn't mind, tell me a little bit more about your efforts with the book and what you hope that the book will achieve in a community. Tell us a little more about the book.
Yeah. So the book's called Behavior-Driven Development with Cucumber.
Okay.
Copy with me. Yeah. I wrote this over the course of, way too long. It took about 8 years to write because it turned out to be a couple books along the way. I threw away probably 600 pages to end up with the 200 or so that I landed on. Because writing a book is a complex thing. I think you learn about the thing you're writing about as you do it. And I probably wouldn't do it in such an unstructured way a second time around. I learned a lot about the process too. But the book originally started out as something focused on the test automation side of it, the tool side of it. But it turned out there are a lot of books that do that already. And as I was training and coaching teams to apply this stuff, I realized that's not the part people get stuck on. Test automation is software development, and I'm dealing with software teams. So they know how to do software development. I can teach them a little bit about how it's different with these tools, but that's not the part where they really needed help. The part that was missing was, how do you collaborate in this way? How do product people, testers, programmers have the right conversations so you end up with software that actually does what people want it to do and doesn't do the things nobody needs it to do? So we don't have to maintain all those features nobody wants in the end. So the book ended up being really a book about collaboration with a little bit about the test automation bit, but probably I don't know, less than 20% of it is at all code related. And the bulk of it is actually a narrative of a team learning to work in this way, kind of written as a play. So you get to observe, what is it like? One of the drafts in between, we were describing what the collaboration looks like. And I had that voice in my head of my English teachers from years ago saying, show, don't tell. Like, how do we actually show people what this is like? Because you don't know unless you've experienced it,
Right.
how a good team feels different. And describing that from the outside is hard. So my friend Paul Rayner was co-author for a couple of years during that period. And he suggested we just tell a story, like make up a team that is learning to do this and describe their experience from the inside. And it turned out to be a really nice way to show what this kind of collaboration looks like. I've had a lot of people read it and say, yeah, I'm not a developer. I don't care much about the test automation part, but this showed me what a good Agile software team can look like.
Exactly. And Cucumber is an amazing tool. I'll tell you that right now. I have a mad obsession for that tool when it comes to helping organizations better understand using Gherkin, using the syntax, figuring things out. I think that that's going a long way. And what I'm seeing in the Agile community from the trainer perspective is that I'm having a lot different clientele than typically that would ask for this type of knowledge. They're seeking this type of knowledge, but they don't know what to call it. And then when you introduce basic Gherkin given when then, and when you start talking about acceptance testing and acceptance test driven design, and you start talking about BDD in general, people want to get on that bandwagon, but I don't think many people know where to start. So that's my next question, Richard. If I were a leader, an executive at an Agile company, and I said, it's a great thing I can pick up this book, but to be honest, executives really don't spend as much time reading books as they should. What would you say is the first what is the first step? Where do I even begin? If I'm an executive or I'm a leader and I'm listening to Richard, you're the expert. Where do I start? What do I do first?
Yeah, start talking about examples. So when you're describing the behavior you want, in a feature, in a user story, instead of doing the abstract acceptance criteria of the system shall do X and Y and handle all these values, that sort of thing, instead tell a story of somebody doing it. Here's an example of instead of, so I use public libraries as a domain to practice on in my workshops and in the book. And so to give you a concrete example, to do what I'm talking about, sure. If I'm describing, I want to find a book by its exact title in the library catalog, that phrase exact title, I could try to specify that in an abstract way, like here's what I mean by exact. It has exactly the same characters and that sort of thing. Or I could say, when I search for A Tale of Two Cities, I should find the Dickens novel, not a bunch of urban planning books that happen to also mention city in the title. So when I say exact title, I know what I want. Show me the thing I want. And then the next move is, what's another example that's different? Well, if I search just Tale of Two Cities without that shouldn't find me the book because that's not exact. It's like, really? You want it to be that exact? And now we're having a conversation about the behavior.
And that resonates with me. That makes sense. I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of large companies, especially in the entertainment industry, and one of the largest in the entertainment industry. They end up doing a lot of this because they really want to understand the behavior of the people that visit their theme parks and visit their facilities, visit their hotels, and they strive really hard to be pleasing, to create a pleasing experience, to create a masterful experience that everyone feels that they're part of a family, part of a bigger ecosystem or culture. And they do a lot of research. But what surprised me, Richard, is that sometimes when I go in and I start talking to them from an Imagineering perspective, from a perspective of, well, now we all know who it is. No, but when I start talking to them, one of the things that I discover is that oftentimes they don't take it down to this behavioral driven level. So I guess now that we understand what we need to get started, I guess the second question would be, a lot of people ask, so I'm just going to come straight out and ask, they ask, what type of training or coaching, or is there anything out there that, if I wanted to get my teams on the bandwagon and I wanted to get them some fundamental, let's all get on the same page, what types of offerings are there? Because I know personally through the Scrum Alliance that they don't have anything specific for this. Right. What do I do to seek out something like this? Is there something out there?
There's a handful of people that do things around this. My company, Humanizing Work, has a workshop for adopting behavior-driven development. And we do it as a 4-day thing, where BDD really has two parts. There's the conversations part, like how do we talk about the behavior before we even think about test automation or anything, right. And then the test automation part. And so we'll do a day of getting good at talking about behavior and then eventually formalizing it into that Gherkin language in Cucumber, and then a day of practicing that in your environment. and then the same kind of 2-day cycle on the automation side. And that seems to work really well for teams to get a chance to practice the concepts in a safe environment, using fake examples contrived to get them through the skills,
Gotcha.
and then immediately practicing it in their environment so they have reference cases for what does this look like for us. And that combination of really training in a classroom environment and then kind of coached practice in your own environment seems to work really well to get teams going with this. And we do that virtually now.
Oh, okay.
This was one of the first classes I did virtually, not intentionally. I was teaching it in person when Snowmageddon hit the area in Pennsylvania where I was doing this a few years ago, and I ended up teaching it from the hotel room and discovered that for this kind of course, it actually worked better on Zoom than it worked in person, because we could share screens more easily. We could see what other people are doing and collaborate around it. So 2 years before COVID, I started shifting this course virtual. And now that everybody's really used to the tools, it's working great with Miro and Zoom instead of trying to do it in a classroom and breathe down somebody's neck on a laptop.
Yeah, I'm finding the same thing. When I go to teach Certified Scrum Master, Advanced Certified Scrum Master, some of the things that I'm seeing are the same trends, that I'm getting a lot more favorable results with using collaborative tools like Canva, Mural, things like that, where people can collaborate and where we can share screens and talk about things and share examples. And you're in a comfortable environment where you feel psychological safety, and you feel like you're more open because you have the protection of the screen. Right. And I just feel like the classes have been far more effective. So Richard, I am going to drop a link to your book in the comments below. So I will make sure we have that in a synopsis with a summary. But I always end with the 3 questions. So the 3 questions are not, what did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? And if you have any impediments, just want to make sure I throw that out there. So the 3 questions. The first question for you, Richard, is with regard to BDD, do you see this as, so I guess what I'm equating it to today, equating it to Agile today, I feel like a lot of people are starting to shift away from the traditional Scrum or Agile mindset and looking for better ways to do things. How do you feel, or do you feel, that BDD has a place here? And I know you kind of high level answered that, but I just want a little more in depth. I guess let me ask it this way. Better question. If I gave you permission to change one thing about Agile, if I let you pull one lever to make BDD more inclusive, what would that lever be? What would you change? What would be the one change you could do it if you didn't get black sheep out of the Agile community? What would be the one lever you pull?
Yeah, there was my immediate answer to that question. And then there's the answer I'm actually going to give you.
You can give me both.
I think
we're all friends here.
Yes. Probably not after that answer. Depending on who's listening. So I think if there was one thing that I would change, it's that let's start caring about all the people involved. And I mean customers, I mean developers, colleagues outside the team. And to me, the good practices for leaders, the good practices for product owners, the good practices like BDD for a team are really all expressions of taking into account how humans actually function and behaving as if people mattered. So like talking about examples works because that's how humans work. We do better with concrete than abstract. Empathizing with our customers makes sense because we're trying to solve a problem for humans. So that's the one thing would be keep coming back to the human focus. Okay,
so 2. If someone wanted to reach out to you directly and someone wanted to contact you, they said, that Richard guy is amazing, which I already knew. How do they reach out to you directly? How do they reach out to Humanizing Work? Where do you want them to reach out? So go ahead and give yourself a shameless plug.
You can find all the stuff we're doing at humanizingwork.com. I'm on Twitter as RS Lawrence. That's the one social media place I actually engage. Okay. And I'm open to getting emails from people who are interested in this. I'm Richard at humanizingwork.com.
That's awesome. And last question. If there was one thing, and this is the last question I asked to everybody, if there's one thing that you could do to help change the world, not just with regard to Agile, but change the world with regard to just making it a better place, what would your stamp on the world be? What legacy would you leave behind? What's the one thing you would change?
I think the actual legacy I've left is the story splitting poster, which there are millions of in the world. I've joked that that's probably going to get printed on my tombstone. But I hope the legacy that I leave is getting people to pay more attention to the people around them and have a real impact on the world because they care about people.
Well, I'm sure everybody picked up on this, but just in case they didn't, Richard, I've known you for years. And what I can say is this guy is 100% genuine. He's the real deal, folks. So if you have questions about BDD, don't come to me, because I'll point you to him. So do send it out. Send out an email. Visit Humanizing Work. There's a lot of good information there. They have some classes available if you're interested in BDD. Richard, it's been a pleasure. I know your time's valuable. Thank you for spending the time here.
It was great to talk with you, Lee. Thanks.
If any of you have any other questions about any other Agile-related topic, feel free to reach out. You can reach us at learnmore@agiledad.com, and I'm sure if you have questions for Richard and you want to point them his way, we'll be happy to do that for you as well. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.